Okay, so this one is going to be a little bit different to normal. I was working with actually an organ student the other day. We were focusing on some specific practice techniques and strategies that he could use going forward for faster progress. What I'm about to share with you are some practice techniques that are going to be useful for him, but are also going to be useful for anybody trying to improve their practice and make quicker progress. So I think the first thing, because it's the most important thing that underpins everything about practice, is what I call the 3-step framework: what, how, and do. Now, it sounds obvious when I say it, but actually, a lot of people don't use this in their practice when they really should be. Every time you put your hands on the keyboard, you should know, what am I trying to achieve here? How am I trying to achieve it? And then obviously doing it. Let's start with the what. A lot of people, when they're practicing the piano, they'll try to do something to make it better. Okay, but that's the problem, the make it better part. We don't really know what that means yet. For example, a student might play the same line 10 times in a row. But if you haven't figured out precisely what you're trying to improve, there's really no point. And there actually might be far easier ways to achieve what you're trying to achieve. Or let's say you have a passage of fast semiquavers. Would it be better to play that line 10 times over and over again with no variation? Or would it be better to play with certain dotted rhythms and reverse dotted rhythms? Or play it really slowly? I think the answer is pretty obvious. We want to do option number 2. We want to use techniques that are specifically designed to target the issues that we're encountering. And this also forces you to actually listen to your playing while you're practicing, instead of just playing through things without much critical thinking. Then the next step I talked about was how. Again, this step is really important because it takes us from using practice techniques just because we know them to using practice techniques that are specifically designed to help with the issue that we're encountering. So for example, let's say I'm having trouble in a stride piano section where my left hand is jumping from bass notes to chords to bass notes to chords. First, we would go through our what step. What's the problem? Well, for me, when I have stride piano, the bass note tends to be a little bit inaccurate and we might have some split notes down at the bottom. How am I going to practice that? Am I going to slow it down? Play it lots of times? There's actually a practice technique that specifically targets the fact that the left hand is inaccurate when we hit that bottom octave. It's the jump and stop, and I've talked about it a little bit on my community already. We jump to the note that's the problem. We have our fingers ready to play the note, but we don't actually play it. So this specifically trains accurate jumping, and it also trains me to prepare my hand on the note before I actually play it. And if we do that, we really target the issue rather than just playing and hoping for the best. You'll often find that you improve a lot faster when you nail the how, because suddenly you're using techniques that actually might feel pretty easy. They're easier because you're targeting the specific thing that's going wrong, rather than trying to play everything, even though you're just targeting one thing. The next point I want to talk about is bucket theory, or at least what I call bucket theory, not a technical term. I want you to imagine your brain as 2 separate buckets. We've got the time that you played a passage correctly, and the times that you played a passage incorrectly. And most students operate like this. They get it wrong. They get it wrong again, but slightly better. They get it wrong again. They get it wrong again. They get it wrong again. And eventually, they'll play it correctly. And in most students' minds, they'll think, oh, I am now playing it correctly. I've gone through a linear process from playing it completely wrong to completely correctly. I am done with this part. Whereas in reality, that's not what has happened. What you've just done is you've dumped hundreds of marbles into the incorrect bucket and 1 marble into the correct bucket. When you're in a stressful performance situation, what do you think your brain is going to choose? The incorrect bucket or the correct bucket? Well, the answer is now obvious, but I can see why people would fall for this. It feels like a line of progression. You're going from completely wrong to completely right. It feels, once you get it right, that you've got it now. Why would you need to keep practicing? In many skills in life, we want to get things wrong. We want to make mistakes in order to be able to improve. That's the only way you can improve. And actually, the same is kind of true on the piano. Making mistakes will happen, and without trying, and inevitably failing, you're obviously not going to improve. But here's the small mindset shift that I want you to bring into your own practice. Don't allow yourself to be constantly making mistakes in your practice, in the hope that by making those mistakes, your brain will know for next time to improve. That's not how this works at all. Remember that when you're playing the piano, you're rehearsing particular movements. If you practice the wrong movement, your brain isn't going to automatically know that it was wrong and correct it next time. What you need to do instead is use practice techniques that allow you to play things correctly. And what that usually means is slowing it down. Please Play much slower than you think you need to. Play at the speed of no mistakes, or at least a speed where you can get pretty much everything absolutely correct, pretty much all of the time. Now, if you're worried about, I need to play faster, this piece is not written to be played this slowly, don't worry. Your subconscious is actually going to do all the work for you. You don't need to do anything to increase the speed of your playing. All you need to do is learn the blueprint, get the blueprint, the slow version, absolutely nailed, and let your unconscious mind do the rest of the work in your sleep. This is the magical thing about your brain. If you give it the correct blueprint, it will teach you the piece. If you try to force it and practice stuff again and again and constantly play wrong notes and incorrect movements, then that is what your brain is going to teach you. It's as simple as that. Here's another problem that I find a lot of self-taught pianists fall into. A lot of self-taught pianists come to me and they say, I can read the notes and I've got a good sense of melody, but I think I'm struggling with rhythm and pulse. Unfortunately, they're often right about that. Here's the little shift that you need to make in your own personal practice. If you're not playing it in time, it's not helping you to learn. Is there a place for playing things out of time? Actually, yes. Sometimes we need to be figuring out the fingering before we then start learning that blueprint that I was talking about earlier. Once you're actually clear on the notes and the rhythms, once you know what fingerings you need to be using, then you need to be practicing in time always. How can you make sure you're doing that? There are two main ways. Number one, use the metronome. I know it's boring and we definitely do not want to be playing metronomically when we get to the final performance. But in the first instance, to make sure that you're playing in time, the metronome is an amazing tool. Oftentimes you'll be slowing down and speeding up things unintentionally. You'll actually have no idea until you use the metronome. A little tip for you. Sometimes it feels like the metronome is speeding up or slowing down. In reality, what's happening is that you're used to doing the opposite. When the metronome feels like it's speeding up, you're used to slowing down. When the metronome feels like it's slowing down, you're used to speeding up. Pay attention to that signal because it's giving you valuable information. The second way is to count the beats of the bar out loud while you're playing. Don't get me wrong, it is not easy to be counting and playing at the same time. But remember, we want to be practicing without mistakes. So there are a few things we can do to make it easier. Perhaps try hands separately, or slowing it down as much as you want. If you use one of those two techniques, or even the combination of both of them, you're going to find that you improve much faster than before. You're forcing your brain to continue reading without hesitation, and in fact, that practice itself also improves your sight reading. The final thing comes back to the what part of what, how, do, and that is always fully define what you're practicing before you start playing. Never start playing without knowing exactly where you're going to stop, and always stick to that. Now, you might be playing from the beginning all the way through to the end, and in some situations, that's perfectly fine. But a lot of the time, you're only trying to fix a very specific issue. That very specific issue will probably occur in a very specific passage, and so you should only practice that passage. Here's another really important thing to remember about your brain when it comes to defining specifically what you're trying to practice. Think about bar 1 of a 100 bar piece. When you play through bar 1, your brain's memory of that bar increases temporarily. When you then go to bar 2, it gets slightly lower, bar 3 slightly lower, bar 4 slightly lower. By the 10th bar, your brain has completely forgotten about bar 1. That's okay though, because what most students do is they go back to bar 1 again. Bar 1 goes up to 100% memory, and then as we get to bar 2, it goes down, bar 3, it goes down, bar 4, it goes down. If we continue playing through that 100 bar piece over and over again, the memory of bar 1 is going to go up and it's going to go down. What's definitely not going to happen is bar 1 staying at a consistently high level of memory. If we want to memorize bar 1, we can just play bar 1, or let's say bars 1 to 4. We play bar 1, our memory goes up. We play bar 2, 3, and 4. But luckily, bar 1 is not at 0 yet. We then go back to bar 1 and we add to what we already know. This is when we now take advantage of the forgetting curve. The more times we partially forget and then re-remember a particular thing, the better it sticks in our mind. The problem is when you play through the whole piece or large sections is that you completely forget what you did. And so you can't take advantage of multiple rememberings from partial forgetting. I really hope this video has been helpful and that you have at least one concrete takeaway that you can apply to your practice today. If you apply even one of these, you should start seeing much faster progress. Remember, it only takes you fixing one part of your practice to develop the mindset that helps across all of your practice. If there's one thing I think that you should definitely take away from this video, it's what, how, and do. Always define specifically what you're trying to solve, define exactly how you're going to solve it, and then of course do it. If you found this helpful, you should contact me using the email address below. I offer a free trial lesson followed by 2 introductory lessons at a reduced rate. And what's really important to me is that even if you decide not to continue after the trial lesson, you still have a really concrete plan about how you're going to improve. So you've got nothing to lose, everything to gain, and I hope to hear from you.